Hello and welcome. I'm Tino Machetta, a technology instructor at the Poughkeepsie Public Library. In this video, we'll be covering the basics of Microsoft Word. This is one in a series of classes offered at the library. This class is an overview of using Word. Today we'll be creating a short letter. Our general philosophy is to type first and to format later. This will allow us to convey our thoughts without having to worry about the way things should look until after we're done. Now we'll be using Word 2019 here specifically, but this should also work in other versions of Word, such as 2016, 2021, and Office 365. Before we get started, it's important to know how Word fits into the grand scheme of Microsoft applications. Word is part of the Microsoft Office suite, and each program has its own specific use. For example, Excel is used for creating spreadsheets that involve organizing text and numbers and to do calculations, whereas PowerPoint is used to create presentations. Word is used for creating documents like letters, memos, and you can even use it to write a novel. So now we can get started. We can open up Word from the Start menu in Windows 10 by clicking down at the bottom left-hand side here where the mouse is pointed. We can left-click on that and then it'll bring up a list of all of our applications. The easiest way to find Word is to simply start typing. W-O-R-D. So you should see Word pop up, and you can go right over to it with your mouse and left click on it, and then Word will start up. Now at this point we have a number of options. We have a bunch of different things we can click on, but right now we're just going to click on a blank document. So with that, we have Word opened and we have a document ready to go, and you'll notice on top here in blue, in the blue section, it says Document 1. Now that's just the default title for any Word document that you begin. That'll change when we save it, but it's just something to note for later. Now that we're in Word, let's take a tour of the application. The smallest but perhaps most important toolbar is located all the way over to the top left, and it's called the Quick Access Toolbar. Now the reason why this is so important is because it has some of the most important features built into Word itself. That includes our Save button, our Undo button, and our Redo button. I encourage you to save as often as possible because you don't want to lose any of your work. The next thing to look at are the Windows controls, which are located on the top right-hand side of the screen. Now these three buttons in particular allow the application to be maximized, minimized, or to close out entirely. So the first one we'll look at is the Minimize button. It looks like a little dash. Now if you click on this, it does just like it says it will. It'll minimize the application. So if you left click on it, Word will minimize. If you need to get Word back, it's located at the bottom where your taskbar is, and you'll see it'll have the Word icon, and it'll say Document 1, the tentative title of our document. To maximize it back to full screen again, you simply left click, and it brings it right back to where it was. Now if you want to keep Word open, but not have it take up the full screen, that's when the second icon comes in. If you click on that, you can see it's not minimized anymore, but it's not the full screen either. And if you would like to bring it back to full screen, you can see the icon change to a larger box, and it says that we can maximize. So if we left click on that, it takes us back to our full screen mode. Now if you want to close out the entire application, we can go all the way to the far right where our X turns red, and if we hover over it, it tells us it is the close icon. Now I suggest that you save your work before you do that, but in case you forget to do so, after pressing the X with the left mouse button, Word will prompt you to save your work one more time. After doing that, the entire document will close out. The next thing to look at is our scroll bar, which is on the right-hand side of the entire application. Now you can't see the entire Word document that's in front of us. So in order to get to this bottom part, we can always grab this bar right here with the left mouse, click and hold, and drag down, and that will allow us to be able to see the entire document. Another way you can do that is by using the arrows located above and below the bar. You can always left click on them, and that'll move it up incrementally and down as well. Another way to be able to look at the Word document fully is by using the zoom icon on the bottom right. You can see right now it's set to 100%, but you can either decrease or increase the zoom with the minus and plus signs, or you can use the slider to click and drag back and forth. So if I want to see more of this particular page, I'm just going to click this minus sign to zoom out, and you can see two things happen. One, our zoom goes from 100 to 90%, and two, we can see a little bit more of the screen, of the Word document. Now if I click it again and again, I can finally see the entire thing. Similarly, I can go the other way and zoom in. Now we can move over to the bottom left of the screen, where we can take a look at the status bar. Now this will give you information about the document itself, like how many pages you have, what page you're on, and your word count. So now we can talk about the ribbon. This is where you're going to find all the tools that you're going to use to do anything in Word. And it's located horizontally across the top of the Word document itself. It's arranged together in groupings. So for example, on our Home tab, we have our clipboard groupings, our font group, our paragraph group, our styles group, and our editing group. The Home tab is where you're going to have all of your main formatting things. For example, making text bold, italicizing it, underlining it, changing the font, and changing the font size. Now Word did a really good job here because they arranged things in tabs in a way where all of the important things, or at least most of the important things that you're going to use, are located immediately in this Home tab. And if you need other things, you can always click on the necessary tab and it'll change this ribbon. So for example, if I click on Insert, you'll see how our ribbon changes. Well, it's convenient if you need to insert a picture or a table, for example. If we click on the Layout tab, this is where we can insert columns, change our margins, insert breaks. If we want to look at saving out our document, we can go to the File tab. Now that changes things a little bit, but this is where we can open a document, create a new document, save our document. So they put everything pretty much right at our fingertips. And for the purposes of this class, pretty much everything that we're going to do will center around the Home tab, and briefly for the Insert tab when we need to add a picture to our project that we're going to work on. With all of that in mind, we can begin working on our project. We're going to be writing a letter to our friend Jane about our new garden club, and we're going to let her know that we have regularly occurring meetings. Now we're trying to have this letter be about 1 page long when we're done. The easiest way to do this is to have me type the letter, and you can follow right behind where I am. So I'll type a line, and you can type it on your end as well. If you need any extra time, feel free to pause the video and start it again when you're ready so you don't get too far behind. Don't worry about any spelling mistakes, grammar, anything like that. That's something that we'll address afterwards. Remember, we're typing first and we're formatting later. This is the part where we just get our thoughts down. And when something of note comes up, I will mention it. Okay, so first things first, we'll start with today's date. So we can type February 2nd, 2023, or whatever the current date is for yourself. Now, first thing to notice, as soon as I type the first 4 letters in the month, Word is already trying to do some thinking here, and it's taking a guess that I'm trying to type the month February. Now, if that's correct, which it is, I have 2 choices. I can ignore that and just keep on typing, or I can press enter and it will autofill the rest of the month for me. So if I press enter, it automatically fills in February. Now it's February 3rd, 2023. So as soon as I hit the space bar, it'll also give me some more options here, and it's going to say basically, hey, I think you mean today's date. Do you want me to put that in for you? Just hit the enter key. Now that could be wrong, so you may want to ignore that and type in whatever the actual date is. But today, as of this recording, it is February 3rd, 2023, so I'm going to press enter. Now that'll save you just a little bit of time. Not too much, but it helps. Then what I'm going to do is I want to jump to the next line. So I'll do that by hitting the enter key 1 time. And you see our cursor will jump down right below February. This is where we're going to type Dear Jane and put a comma in. Then we're going to hit enter 1 more time, and we're going to go on with our letter here. Now remember, it doesn't look like much of a letter, and it won't look like much of a letter when we're done typing, but this is the part where we simply get our thoughts down. When we're done with all of that, we'll make sure we save, and then we'll make it look like a letter by doing some formatting. So we're not worried about making it look like a letter, we're just getting our thoughts down at this point. So we'll continue. We are excited to tell you about our new garden club. Our first meeting will be held on Saturday. Now this does the same thing with the days of the week that it does with the months. I type the first 4 letters of the day of the week, Saturday, and it allows me to autofill that with the enter key. So I could ignore it and fully type out Saturday on my own, or I can press enter and it does it for me. So our first meeting will be held on Saturday, comma. Now here's another month. We're going to do August 20th. So you can see the first 4 letters are typed and it autofills August for me. So this will be Saturday, August 20th at the Adrian's Library. Period. Now, a couple things to note. First and foremost, I want to be very clear that you do not have to hit the enter key to drop to a new line. It's not a requirement. You can do that whenever you want to, which is essentially when you want to make a new paragraph, which is when you want to start a new thought. But if you're just typing, our first meeting will be held on Saturday, August 20th at the Adrian's Library. Instead of it just running off the page, Word will automatically wrap the text down to the next line. So I did not have to hit enter here. I can, but that's only if I want to start a new paragraph, which is what I'm going to do right here at the end, where my cursor is right at the period, right after it, where it says Adrian's Library. I'm going to start a new thought here, so I'm going to hit the enter key, and then it drops it down for me. Also, don't be surprised if the word Adrian's is underlined for you. It's not necessarily spelled incorrectly, but Word may think it is. Don't worry about that. And same thing goes with anything else. We're going to discuss that in great detail when we get to the formatting part of it. We can just leave it for now. So we'll continue. The flower we plan to discuss is shown below. With the colon. And you can add your colon by pressing the Shift button and hitting the semicolon button. That'll actually add the colon for you. Now, of course, this is where we would add our picture of our flower. We're not going to do that here. We're going to do that later when we do the formatting. You certainly can add it now, but I'm going to save it to the end. I'm going to hit enter one more time. New thought. We will have regular meetings on the following dates. And I'm going to add another colon, and then I'm going to hit enter, and then I have 3 dates in particular. So we're going to add months, so we know what to do there. September 17th, that's 1 month, or 1 date. Then I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to do the same thing for October 15th. And then finally, I'm going to do it again for November 12th. And then I'm going to hit enter again. We hope to see you soon. And then I'm going to hit enter again. And then I'm going to type thank you with a comma. Then I'm going to hit enter one final time, and I'm going to add Garden Club President. Now that we've typed the letter, this is a good place to save our file. In order to do that, we're going to take our mouse and we're going to go over to the File tab located in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, and we're going to left-click. Now that brings us to several options. We're going to scroll down to Save As, left-click that, and then we're going to go a little farther down to the right where our Browse folder is. It's a manila folder. We're going to click on that as well. And this opens up a dialog box where we have a handful of options. This is where we'll select a location to save our file, and we'll give it a name. Now there's a few places where you can reasonably save a file, but the most important thing you can do is be consistent. So pick a location that you'll remember. This way, if you ever need to go back to the file, you'll know exactly where it is. So, you could put it under your Documents folder, maybe a few other places, put it on a flash drive. I'm going to pick my desktop. This way I can get right back to it as soon as I turn on my computer the next day. So I'm going to click on desktop, and then I'm going to have to title this. Now, this defaulted to document 1 for me, but it may have also given you the date that you used in the letter itself. Word is basically trying to help you here. It's trying to give you a title that it thinks makes sense. Now, whatever's there will most likely not be what you want it to be as the title. If it does have a date there, that's somewhat helpful, but it doesn't really tell you what the letter is actually about. So I'm going to change this to Garden Club letter. Now, if you notice, when I clicked here, the file name was selected for me in blue. And that means that I don't have to do anything more than simply type whatever I want the title to be, and it'll just go right over whatever's written there. In this case, for me, it'll be document 1. So I'm going to just start typing and change that to Garden Club Letter. And then I'm going to hit the Save button. And you can see on top here, our document 1 changed to what we just saved our letter as, which is Garden Club Letter. Now in the future, any changes that we make, we can just hit the Save button right here on the top left, and it won't create a new file. It'll just update the one that we just saved. Now that we're done typing, we can format the document to look more like a letter. Now, one thing of note is that we can't just format text by selecting certain things from the ribbon here. We can't just click on bold and expect something to become bold. First thing we would have to do is actually select the text in particular that we want to format, and then click on the appropriate button in order to do that particular formatting. Now, one way to do this in particular is to work directly with the material that we want to format. So say we wanted to select the word Adrian's and make that bold, we would start with our mouse right before the A in Adrian's, left click and hold that down and drag across until we got to the E in Adrian's, and then release the mouse. That selects the word Adrian's, where we can come over and click on the B to make it bold, and you can see we've turned it bold. And we could also click it to turn it off. Now, another thing that you can do to select a word is to double click. So if I wanted to select the word discuss, I would just double click it with the mouse. And I've done the same exact thing. And of course I can go over and make that bold and then turn off bold. Now, that's one way of doing it, but another way is to focus on the left-hand side of the letter itself where we're typing. All along this border here, if you notice, the mouse is actually pointing to the right. Now, when we're actually typing our letter, we have this I-shaped pointer, like a capital I. But for most of what we're doing in Windows, if you focus on the top here where the blue border is, you'll see the pointer is pointing to the left. That's pretty much the standard. That's what you're going to see most of the time. But in this particular area right here, along the left-hand side, you'll see that the pointer switches direction. Now, this is a special area where, say we wanted to select this entire line here. Yes, we can click from here and drag all the way across with the mouse, or we can just align our mouse with that line here, make sure that it's pointing to the right, and then just single click. And it selects the entire line. Now, if we want to select the entire paragraph, being this entire section here, not just this first line, but the second line as well, all we would have to do is click 2 times. Now, if you want to select the entire document, and this can be a little tricky, all you do is triple click. And you can see it selects the entire document. If that's a little hard for you, that's not a big deal. A lot of people do have trouble with that. The first thing we can do here is just click anywhere on the document once to deselect it. There's 2 alternatives to triple clicking if you don't like doing that. One is to go to our Home tab and go all the way to the right where the Select button is. Click on that, and then you can see the very first option is Select All. And it does just that. It selects all of our information that we typed previously. Now I'm going to left click to deselect that. Now, if you're a fan of using keyboard shortcuts, another way of doing the same thing is to hold down the Control button on the keyboard and press the A button. And that'll do, again, the same exact thing. It'll select all of our text. Now that we know a little bit more about how to select text in a document, we can work toward formatting our document to look like the letter we had in mind all along. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to left click my mouse to deselect all that text. And what we're going to do is we're going to pretty much travel all the way down the line here and go through it piece by piece and do the formatting that we need to at any given line or paragraph. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create a little bit of space. So we have our date on top, followed by Dear Jane. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to put a blank line between these two lines here. So the way that we can do that is to left click our mouse right at the end of 2023, and we have our blinking cursor right at the end of the 3 there, and simply hit the enter key on the keyboard. Now what that does is it'll drop everything from that point down one line. So that'll give us the space that we need there. Similarly, we're going to do the same thing after Dear Jane, where our comma is. I would like to have a little space between that and the letter itself. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put my cursor right there after the comma, Dear Jane, comma, and I'm going to hit enter, and that creates a little bit of space there. So that looks good already. The next thing I want to do is take this date on top, this February 3rd, 2023, and I would like to push it all the way over to the right-hand side. Now, in order to do that, we're going to just click our mouse anywhere here, right? Keeping in mind, normally you do have to select text first, but here is a case where we can just click our mouse anywhere the text is that we want to move. And then we can format from there by going over to our Home tab, the paragraph group, and you can see over here we have Align Left selected. That's on by default. Moving over one, we have Align Center. If we click on that, it does just that. It puts it in the center of the page, but we want the one next to that. We want Align Right. So we'll click on that one, and it pushes our date as far to the right as possible. Now, as we read this, right, we are excited to tell you about our new garden club. Our first meeting will be held on Saturday, August 20th. Well, what if we wanted to change that a little bit? Our first meeting will be held. Maybe we just want to simplify that a little bit. Our first meeting is on Saturday, August 20th. Okay, that's easy enough to take care of. Now, you can put the cursor at the end of the D in held, hit backspace, and that'll just delete all of this text, and then we can fill in that blank space with the word is. That will work, but another thing you can do is select the text like we were just doing before. Unfortunately, there's no shortcut to it. If we just double click on the word will, for example, it'll select just that. And if we try to use our trick of going over to the left-hand side and single click, that won't give us that particular section of will be held by itself. Double clicking will do the whole paragraph. So we do have to click and drag, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you have to. So our goal is to select will be held and replace that with the word is. All right, so we'll just start in front of the W, click our mouse and hold that down, that left button, and drag across until will be held is selected. Now you don't even have to delete that. You can, but you don't have to. If we want to change that to our first meeting is on Saturday, we just have to type right over that, and then is there. Our first meeting is on Saturday, August 20th. Keep in mind, if you don't want that, we always have our undo button on the top left with our quick access toolbar. So you could just click that and will be held is right back where it was. Ultimately, I think is on Saturday is a little bit better. So I'm going to keep that. So I'm going to click our redo button, which is right next to our undo button. So I'm going to go with our first meeting is on Saturday, August 20th at the Adrian's Library. Before we go any further, I would like to change the font and the font size for the entire document. Now, in order to do that, remember we have to select everything, all of our text, and then we're going to go over to our Home tab where we have our font group, and we can already see what we have as the default. Calibri body is the font, and that is size 11. We're going to change both of those. So first things first, we're going to make sure that we have our document selected. We have our cursor somewhere on the page, and we're going to select all of our text. Remember, there's multiple ways of doing that. I'm going to hold down Control and press the A key, and that selects all of the text that we have. And with that, whatever changes we make on top here will be reflected here. So we're going to go over to where it says Calibri body, and we're going to see a drop down arrow right next to it. If we click on that, it'll give us a whole list of potential fonts. Now, not only are the font names written the way the font will appear, we also have a bonus here where there's a live preview of what that font will look like if we were to select it. So without clicking our mouse, if we just hover down, just scroll down a little bit, you'll see each time a new font is selected, it changes. So this is a nice way of being able to determine what your document will look like before you ever have to actually click on any of these. So with that in mind, the one that I'm looking for is Arial Rounded MT Bold. All right, these are alphabetized, so it shouldn't be too far from the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to left click on that, and now everything in our document is Arial Rounded MT Bold. Secondly, now that we have everything selected, we're going to keep that selected and change the font size. It's the same exact process. We're going to hit the drop down arrow next to our 11, and we're going to change that. This also gives you a live preview, so you can see it start off at 8, 9, 10, 11, and we're just going to go down past 12, and we're going to select 14. So that has changed the font and font size for the entire document. Now that we have that done, I want to focus on these 3 dates in particular, September, October, and November. I would like them to be a little different. So I'm going to pick a different font and font size for them, and I'm also going to center that text, because that's exactly when I would want us to be able to meet for our garden club. So I want that to stand out. So in order to do that, I'm going to just single click anywhere, and that deselects all the text that we just changed. And now we have to focus on these 3 dates in particular. So the easiest way to do that is to click at the start of the S in September and drag all the way down to the end of November 12th. So you should have all 3 of those dates selected, the month and the day of the month. And we're going to do pretty much the same thing here. It shows Arial Rounded MT Bold for the font, because that's what we changed everything to. But now we're going to change just these 3 lines. And what I'm looking for is elephant. Now I have it here because it was recently used, just like Arial Rounded MT Bold. But because this is alphabetized, and you probably don't have yours up here yet, we would just search down here. So we're just going to keep on going past the B's, the C's, here are the D's, and we have elephant. So we're going to click on that, and now you can see a little bit of a difference. The Arial Rounded MT Bold is a little different from the elephant font, but they're both still font size 14. Now what I want to do here, while we still have the 3 dates selected, is change this 14 to 17. Now when we hit the drop down here, you can see it doesn't actually have that. These are more suggestions than anything. These are nice to have because they're just 1 click away, but it's also not a big deal, because if we want to change this to something that's not here, it's perfectly fine. When we click the drop down, the 14 is selected. You can see that it's blue. right? So all we have to do is actually just type in the font that we want. So even though 17 isn't there, if we just type 17 and it appears right here, we can just hit enter and you can see it makes the font larger. So take these as nothing more than suggestions. I'm not saying everything will work here, but you can use numbers that aren't here many times, including 17. So we've changed the font and the font size for the 3 dates. The next thing is to center them. Well, again, just like we did with our date, it's under the paragraph group on our home tab. It's still left aligned, so we're just going to go over one to the center align and just click on that. So that's exactly what we wanted to accomplish. We have our fonts the way we want them to be, our font sizes the way we want them to be, and we centered the dates because we want them to stand out. Okay, so now we can insert our picture. We have a line right here that says the flower we plan to discuss is shown below, and we don't have a flower there. Well, it's easy enough to do this. What we want to do is create a little space between that line and the line below it, and then we'll insert our picture there. We can resize it, we can center it, and that should be good to go. So in order to do that, first things first, we have to give it a little space. We're going to do what we did before. We're going to click right at the end of that sentence where it says the flower that we plan to discuss is shown below, right after the colon, and we're going to hit enter. Now that'll leave a little bit of space. The photo that I'm going to use is significantly larger than that space, but that's okay. It'll just push down the remaining text, the text that's below where our cursor is. In fact, it'll push it down so much it'll most likely go to 2 pages, but that's okay, we'll just resize it. So in order to insert the photo, easy enough, we have our home tab. Right next to it is our insert tab. Right, if we want to insert a picture, we go to the insert tab, makes sense. And then we click on pictures. It's just a little bit to the right of the insert tab itself. And it opens up our insert picture dialog box. Now you can have pictures in many places on your computer or on a flash drive. I have mine under my pictures folder, and I have a picture of some tulips right here. So I'm just going to click insert, and you can see it inserts the photo, but it's very, very large. In fact, it's so large it takes us down to a second page. Well, we really don't want to do that. I mean, this letter is pretty succinct. It's telling our friend Jane exactly what we want, when we want it, throwing in that picture for good measure. We really don't need it to take up 2 pages, especially when that second page is just a little bit of text. So the idea is, okay, if the picture made it too big, then we can just resize the picture to make it smaller again, and then we'll go back to having just 1 page. Well, there's a couple ways we can do that. You can see the picture is selected because we have these little white balls all around the border, right? And the other thing is we can see up here, we have our picture tools with a format tab that we didn't have before. If I click on some of the pre-existing text, you can see that tab disappears, and it only reappears after I click back on the picture. Now this has a few things here, but the important thing that we're focusing on is our height and width. This is one of the 2 ways where we can adjust for the size of the photo itself. Now, I happen to know very specifically that I want the height to be 3 inches. So I'm going to select that text, make sure that it's blue, put a 3 in there, and hit enter. Now you can see it not only changed the height to 3, it automatically changed the width to 4. So it maintains the proportions here, and it doesn't look squished or compressed in any way. And it also got us back down to our 1 page. Now, that's pretty convenient. I would know exactly the size that I want this to be. That's not always the case. But if you do know, you could always do that. You could always just put the numbers in right here. But I'm going to undo that, and we go back to our original dimensions, way too big, 2 pages again, what you can do is focus on these little white balls around the border. Now you have to be careful because all you have to do is click and drag, but if you don't do it on the diagonals, you're going to have a little bit of a problem here. If I start here, for example, and you see how the cursor changes to a 2-sided white arrow, that's what I'm looking for. So I want to make this smaller, so I'm going to click and I'm going to drag. But you see how it just squishes it? Well, that's not what we want. And the same thing would happen if I do it this way. If I pull down, you see how it does make it smaller, but it compresses the image. And again, not what we want. But if we do it diagonally, right, aim for one of the 4 corners and then do the same thing, this works out much better. This maintains the proportions that we want, and it keeps it to 1 page. So I'm just going to shrink it a little bit more. And that looks good. The only other thing left to do is to center it, right? Because if you look at it, you can see it doesn't quite look right, especially with our date centered. So reasonably speaking, we want to center this photo as well. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my Home tab, and I'm just going to click on my Center Align. There you go. Okay, so now that we have our picture inserted, there's just a couple more things we need to do. We can continue on with the formatting, and you can see down here, the last little bit, we hope to see you soon. Thank you, Garden Club President. It's all kind of squished together, so we would like to add a little space to it, just the same way we added space to the top of our letter. Well, we already know how to do that. So if we want to put some space after we hope to see you soon, we just have to click our cursor right there at the end of the sentence and hit enter. And that puts a good little bit of space between that and thank you. And we can do the same thing between thank you and Garden Club President, but I want to leave 2 spaces because I want to leave room for us to sign our name, because this is supposed to be a letter we're sending to our friend Jane, and also to type it. So I'm going to hit enter twice. And right above where it says Garden Club President, I'm going to type my name. Now there's just a little bit of room up here so that we can actually sign our name and then put it in that envelope and mail it out to our friend. Now this is all well and good, but we have our 2 pages again, and it's just the last little bit that's on that second page. And remember, we're trying to keep this to 1. Well, okay, fair enough. We did all this work formatting it, getting our fonts and our font sizes just the way we want, but we still have a couple of extra lines here. Not a big deal. What we can do is select all of our text and then come along to right over here in our font group. We have a couple of capital letter A's, and if we hover over one of them, it's to increase the font size, and one of them is to decrease the font size. Now this isn't something that's calculated like over here when we change our font size to a very specific number, right? This is just, in general, make it larger, in general, make it smaller. Now this is a nice trick, a nice shortcut to deal with these little things where there's just the tiniest little bit that's spilling over to the next page. So in this case, because I have too much, I'm going to select all of the text and then click this button as many times as I need to for these 2 lines to move back up to 1 page. So if you remember to do that, we hold down Control, press the A button, that selects all the text, and I just go over here to the smaller capital A, the decrease font size capital A, and I'm going to click on it. And you can see it shrinks the text a little bit. Now I moved my name up, but I still have Garden Club President, sorry. And I'm going to click on it one more time, and it takes care of it. So now I've successfully shrunk down the text to 1 page It's everything that I want it to be. It has all the information that I want to have in the letter, what we're doing, when we're doing it, the picture that I wanted, the correct date. So this looks good. Now the only thing left after this is to do the spell check. There's a more formal way to do this that we teach in the 102 class, where we use a workflow that will go through the document line by line. But it's important to go through it manually at least once just to see what kinds of errors can come up and how to resolve them on your own. In this case, it's a one-page letter, so it won't be too lengthy of a process, and we'll learn something along the way here. Now, with Word, there's two main types of errors to look for. There's red lines and blue lines, and each one of these can occur for two different reasons. With red lines, it could be a potential spelling error, or at least something that Word thinks is spelled incorrectly. It could also be the result of a double word. For example, saying I went to the store. Having the two thes would create a red line because of the two words being in the same sentence right next to each other. Now, the blue lines can also occur for a couple of reasons. One is incorrect word usage, which we'll have an example of here. And another reason is if there's extra space between words or some formatting inconsistencies. So extra spaces can exist between any words. So if we start off, we are excited to tell you about our new garden club, I only included one space between the we and the are and the excited. But if I accidentally included a second space or more, you would see a blue line right there to indicate that. So as far as fixing the errors, now mileage may vary for the individual user here. I've written the word Adrian's a number of times to the point where I've actually added it to the dictionary that I use all the time that's built into Word, so it actually didn't show up for me, but it most likely did for you. Now, Adriance, A-D-R-I-A-N-C-E, is not spelled incorrectly, but it may indicate to you that it is. Now, Adriance is a proper name, and it's not a common one. If it were John Smith, we wouldn't have this issue. The name would be well understood by Word and we wouldn't have any problems. So you most likely have a red line here. Similarly, depending on your name, all the way at the bottom, depending on how common your name is, you may also have a red line there. Now, in my case, Tino, it's a fairly common name. Word has no trouble with it, but it doesn't understand my last name quite reasonably. It's not a common name. So in this case, it thinks my name is spelled wrong. It's not. The same way your name may be spelled wrong, and most likely Adrian's looks like it's spelled wrong. Well, it turns out in this case, these are examples of what Word thinks is an incorrectly spelled word. Now, to deal with that, you would just go to the word itself and right-click on it with the mouse. And that brings up a number of options. On top here are all the things that it's suggesting that you can change it to. Thinking that it's an incorrectly spelled word, it offers you alternatives. And if you were to click on any of these, it would swap that particular word out with the one that it's underlined in red. Now that's not the case. So I have two more options here. I can ignore all, as in I'm ignoring all instances of my name, and you could do the same exact thing with Adrian's, or I can add it to the dictionary. Now, like I said, I already typed the word Adrian's a number of times because I work at the Adrian's library. So I've already added that to my dictionary. That's why I don't have that issue, and you very well might. Now, of course, I type my name a lot too, so this is a good time for me to add my last name to the dictionary, because obviously I type that a lot as part of my job. So I'm going to click on Add to Dictionary, and you can see it goes away. The word is still there, but it resolves the issue that Word has where it thinks that it's typed erroneously. Going forward, because it's added to the dictionary, every time I type my name, it will not give me any type of error anymore. Now, for Adrian's, I added mine to the dictionary because I use it a lot. But for you to resolve that on your end, you may want to just click on ignore, or ignore all specifically, right? Because you're probably not going to type it as much as I do. In either event, it will remove that line. So that should take care of that. Along the way, too, there could be a number of places where you could have made a mistake typing, or maybe just Word thinks you did. So if you do have any other ones, you may want to pause the video at this point and try to resolve those as well. And it'll be the same exact thing. You just right-click on the word, and you can click on whatever it suggests is the right word, as long as that is the correct word. Or you could ignore it if it actually is spelled correctly. And maybe even add it to the dictionary if you know it's one that you're going to use a lot. But those are basically your three options. Now, the other half of this, the blue lines, I don't have any. Right? So like I said, you may have some. If there's any places where you put in an extra space and you see that double line, you could of course resolve it by just removing that extra space yourself, or you can right click on that just the same and click on the suggestion. See, it's the same exact words, but there's just one space here instead of two. So that'll resolve that as a problem. And again, you could always pause the video to take care of that wherever else you may have these on the document for yourself. But the one that I really want to point out here is in the very first sentence. We are excited to tell you about our new garden club. It doesn't show that there's an issue here, but there actually is. So I'm really trying to show you two things here. I deliberately typed exited instead of excited. I left off the C. Now I do this on purpose in this class. One time in one of the classes, I had accidentally done that, and I didn't catch that. Word did not catch it. None of the students caught it except for one in the back of the room who saw it and pointed it out to me. So going forward, I deliberately leave that out. I deliberately type exited instead of excited, because at that point there should be a blue line here, a double blue, because I'm spelling a word correctly, exited, as in I exited the building. That's spelled correctly, but in the contents of that in the context of that sentence, it doesn't make any sense. We are exited to tell you about our new garden club is not a valid sentence. We are excited to tell you about our new garden club is. So I spelled this word correctly, but it's not the right word. And that meets the criteria for a double blue line to be right here. So that's a mistake on Word's part. And I deliberately leave that in here because it's very easy to use a computer and turn off your brain and just say, hey, it does it for me. But it does have its limitations, right? Like I said, in the 102 class, we'll go through the workflow. And even in there, when it does it line by line, meticulously, word for word, it still will make mistakes, and I'll point out the mistakes in that class. But it's very easy to just let it do the work for you, which is part of the reason why we have a computer. But it's also very easy for it to make a mistake and not catch our mistakes. The weird thing is, if we actually want that double blue line to appear, I have to do something that's very artificial, something that you wouldn't normally do. So I click right here between exited and to, and then I hit enter to bring that down to a new line, and then I hit backspace, and then finally it somehow recognizes it as the wrong type of word, as in it's spelled correctly, but it doesn't fit the context of the sentence. So the error was there the whole time, but we didn't see that until I did this very strange thing that normally you wouldn't do. Now, of course, the solution to that is very simple. We just right-click, and then excited. That's exactly the word I'm looking for. So there you go. We are excited to tell you about our new garden club. Now, if you have any other errors like that, red or blue, pause the video, take care of them. This is basically how you would solve it. You could also manually fix them. Feel free to come in and, add those extra letters or delete the ones that you shouldn't have added. Anything. As long as you have a document that doesn't have any red or blue lines, that puts you in a good spot. And when you're done with that, remember to save, because we did a lot of work and we don't want to lose any of it. And that's all there is to it. You've successfully written a letter start to finish using Microsoft Word. You wrote down the important things that you wanted to convey in your letter, and then you formatted it to look like a letter. Now, having that skill as a foundation means that you can go into Microsoft Word at any time and write not only letters, but really any other basic thing that you want to create. I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and I'd like to let you know that Word 101 is just part of a series of classes that we offer at the Poughkeepsie Public Library. In total, we offer about 30 technology classes, and if you'd like to register for one of those classes or any of the other programs that we offer, you can always go to pouklib.org, and that'll take you to our website. And then you go to events, calendar of events and programs, and that will give you a list of all of the upcoming events that we have. You can even filter by specific category. So if you want to look at just the computer classes, you can click right on that filter, and it'll refresh with any upcoming events that are just computer related. I would like to stress the importance of practicing these skills after you learn them. So to do this, you can come to one of our labs. We actually have several of them throughout the week. We have them Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Adrian's Memorial Library, specifically in the Marcotte Computer Lab. Tuesday evenings in the same place, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And Thursdays, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. at the Boardman Road Library. Now, the classes you have to register for in advance, but the labs themselves, they are drop-in, so you don't have to register. You can come by with any Word-related questions or questions about fixing up your resume, how to search and apply for jobs, create an email account, really anything that's computer-related. Now, if you have any further questions about this, I have my email and phone number on the screen. Again, my name is Tino Machetta, and feel free to reach out to me, email me, call me, come to the lab, say hi. And again, I thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.